Alrighty. Hey everybody, Steve here, retired hobby tech guy, and I gotta turn around and see if you can see me. I guess you can. We talked about doing the Creality K2 Plus. We talked about Creality Print, specifically the top Z distance and adjusting that. We did the test. Check out the last video. And seeing what setting would be good to be able to get the support we need, but not have those supports so fused onto our model that it mars the model itself or it breaks off, some details that we don't want broken off. We want that great balance of supporting our model as it prints so we don't get a failed print with the ease of support removal, but we don't want it so easy that it results in stringing of the overhangs and poor prints as well. So what we ended up doing, we did the little tiny test, and we found that like the 0.26, maybe 0.28 would be a real good one for my machine, the Creality K2 Plus. The combo system with the CFS and all that, it's been working out pretty good. And if you're interested in that, there is a link, a share sale link that you can click, and I will get a couple of nickels out of the deal, but nothing will come out of your pocket. So if you want to throw me a bone, I would really appreciate that. But if you don't do that, you can also like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And then if you get anything out of my videos and you just want to buy me a coffee because you're a cool, respectable person, there's a link down there too. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to the test that we have. And this is the test. Now remember, I ended up showing you a little Viking dude that you can see right here. That little Viking dude is 32 millimeters. And then that was resin printed. And then what we ended up doing is a bigger resin print of this dude. And I don't know, how tall is he? That ends up, he's just over 5 inches, maybe 5¼ inches tall. For those of you in other areas of the world without Freedom units, it's about 130 millimeters. So, or 12 centimeters or 13 centimeters, whatever it is. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. And then what we ended up doing is taking that same model, as we see here, it's big. It's a little bit bigger. So, and this one actually ends up, we're probably going to get 10, maybe 10.5 inches. So this is going to be a larger print. So with that, we're going to see how the supports come off of this, and let's cross our fingers and find out. So the first thing that we ended up doing will be the base. And the base was really interesting because what I ended up doing was a first run of this, and because I had the base like on the build plate angled up at like a 45-degree angle like this, and then it just had the point there and then supports, and I just used hairspray. I didn't use glue stick, and the print kind of went bad. And the good thing is that I caught it early on, so I didn't lose a lot of filament. And I need a trash can, so let me get one of those, because we're gonna have some supports, and we gotta have a place to put all these supports. So what I ended up doing is putting and laying this down flat on the build plate, and of course you can see right there we've got a ton of these things. So look at that. Look at that. Look how nice that is. And we can see in the overhangs that we've got some nice, oh yeah, that turned out really good. That is so much easier to pull those off than what I had been doing before with the stock settings. And, trying to get off all of this stuff, it was just kind of a nightmare. But these are, look at that. We get a little bit on the underhangs, but it's nothing, a little bit of stringing, but nothing too crazy. But again, we have to realize that this was a resin printed 32 millimeter model, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, we had that to contend with. And the way that this base was made, very problematic, and we'll see why, because we have all the support material here. So let's just see if we can start getting this stuff out of here. And you'll see what I'm talking about, because it was definitely kind of a pain, because this isn't like your standard base, and you'll see why. You can probably already see it a little bit. Just not a thing we want. So, but with that, I mean, the supports are coming off, and the other good thing about this, even though the base is kind of messed up on how it's made, because it's not a normal standard base, like usually they're kind of solid and you could just fill it with support material. This has a really odd type of construction, and we'll see that here real quick. We can see that we did get a little bit of stringing on this, but that's because of how odd this base is. And so when I put this on the build plate, you would think this would be totally flat, but it's not. There was multiple areas on here, and this isn't one flat solid surface. So if I was a blender mesh mixer type of dude that was smart on all that stuff, I would have taken it in there and I would have taken off, the bottom to make sure that it was indeed flat, because it's definitely not flat. So yeah, this was just I knew this was going to be problematic when I started this. And with the failure of trying to put it up on the corner and trying to print it out, and then had the failed layers and print and stuff like that, I said, well, I'm just going to use some glue stick. I'm going to put this down as flat as I can get it, and we should be good to go. So while it did print out, the problem is we still have this uneven surface, and that's why we have some of the stringing. So because some of these areas, there wasn't enough to put supports here along these areas here where we got the stringing, and that makes for a very problematic print. And I even took this into, tried to take it into Tinkercad, but Tinkercad has a limit, because I could have leveled this out and taken away and made this perfectly flat, which would have been better. But the problem is this had too many vectors on it, too many trigonometry, whoosy faces and whatever angles, and it said, yeah, it's way too many, and so you couldn't import it into Tinkercad. So I was like, okay, well, that sucks. So that was the reason why I had to print it the way I did, and that's why we ended up getting some of this stringing here. So I don't want you to come away thinking that, oh, the settings he used were all jacked up, and look, it's, the base is all messed up. There's a reason behind that, and so I figured I'd give you that answer. And I could have done another base. I was thinking about making another base, but I was like, yeah, I just don't want to take the time to do that. I just print this, and however it comes out, it'll be what it'll be, but the top will still be okay. With that being said, because it's not perfectly level on here, I'm still going to have to sand it down to make it flat. So yeah, it's one of those things. I was really surprised at how uneven it was and how not flat. And so yeah, you can see underneath how we got some stringing and stuff like that, but the way none of this is flat. We had a little bit, you can see the contact where you have right up here, you can see where the bed's there, and the rest of this, yeah, it's pretty much it. This was the largest area that was flat on this bottom. So you have this little area here like that, and the rest of this is kind of hanging above, and it was just a horrible, horrible base. And whoever designed this, I mean, the top is awesome. I mean, look at that. It looks like marble. And so that came out really good. But The problem is that it wasn't flat on the bottom. They did this great artistic work, and then you just can't make it flat? Seriously? Really? So, and even then we can see that see how it's not flat? Yeah, so, but we got that, so that came out good, as could be expected. You just work with what you got. So now, what we want to do, and you notice that a lot of these supports, especially around the edge, those definitely came off really nice. And if we look at the underside of this, where we had the overhang, which is basically what we had with our test pieces, we can see that we got some real good, there's no stringing. It's a little bit rougher than what I would imagine, but because it's up like this, I kind of figured that's what we would get. Now comes the hard part. This is the big one, because I was kind of nervous about this, and this took over a day. That took a while to print. So here is the monstrosity, and let me move my fan over a little bit because I am a little warm. The joys of live streaming. So here is the print, and I use default tree supports. I didn't use the tree auto support slim style because of the problems of that model support XY distance thing, 0.6, because under the slim supports in Creality Print, it would always, the tree supports would always touch the model, and it would cause some problems. So yeah, we're going to see how this goes. This is going to be interesting to say the least. And we're going to have to start from the top down. And because these are the default tree supports, we've got a lot of material that we need to work on. And it's definitely thicker as compared to the regular or the slim tree supports. So this is going to be interesting on seeing how we're going to get this apart. But as far as the supports by themselves, ouch, those are coming off really nice, and we can see we got some good details here. So the supports at the 0.26 ended up working well, and you can see they support, and we're doing good actually. That is good, and we're not getting a lot of supports just flying off. It is supporting where it should be supporting. And so we're just going to start from the top and work our way down. And the good thing is, with that 0.26 top Z distance, that gives us a support, but it also enables us to get, it allows the support tips to come off really well. So yeah, this is just going to be interesting on how to get all this. So you can see that just pops right off. But when it gets down lower onto the trunk, and I think that's some of the benefit of the Tree Slim. And I'm thinking about, because I did this guy, and he turned out pretty good so far. I mean, I think we'll get a good print out of this. I don't think we'll get a lot of damage and everything. But the problem is with these large tree supports that are larger and more dense, that what we're going to end up with is it uses a little bit more material, but not much. But the Tree Slim would be nicer, so I'm thinking about maybe doing another one. maybe not with this model, but to see if we could get that separation between the model and the support trunks and stuff. So yeah, that'll be interesting. So let us continue on and see what we can do. Because the slim supports are a lot weaker, and so that would make removal of these large support areas definitely a little bit easier to do. But what we've got right now is pretty good. And we don't have a lot of crazy details, but we do have a lot of details, like in the fur that we have up here that turned out really good. And so we'll just go ahead and we'll just work our way down. I'm gonna have support material everywhere flying around the room. And whether it connects up to the model, we'll find out. But again, this is that default tree support. The style is default, so you could see that we would get, especially on those test pieces, we would see that we would get that separation between the trunks and the model itself. Whereas with the slim supports, what we ended up with, unfortunately, was seeing the support trunks touching the model, even though you increase that distance. And matter of fact, I went back to that test piece, Uncle Jesse's test piece for that, and I increased that object support, or whatever it is, support object XY distance up to 0.8, and it still had those support trunks being in contact with the model, even though I increased it that much. So, and let's take a look at this, if you can see that. So those are coming off good. I like that. Not bad at all. So yeah, is that where I want it? Can you see it right there? Okay, I think that's a good reference. Okay. And is this too bright? Or we're just going to get washed out anyway. It doesn't, I don't think it really matters, does it? We'll have to get some shadows on there. But we'll turn everything around and we'll get some better shots of this in, so it's not so washed out. Let's see. Yeah, not bad. Little ponytail and beard action is doing well. Let's kind of work off some of these. So yeah, I was kind of worried about that. And these supports, I mean, some of them aren't even touching. I mean, it seems like they're not even touching. If you can kind of see, like right there, see how it's almost like they're not attached. So maybe with that, maybe we might have to make an adjustment so that we make sure that we do get more contact. But then again, depending on how this turns out and all the details, well, that was on there a little bit. But these, yeah, it's almost like they're not. But everything is turning out good. So, interesting. And I did order off of Kickstarter one of those ultra high frequency blades or whatever, kind of like a ultrasonic blade. That's what I ended up, and getting one of those. So I'm not sure when that's going to come in or when they're planning to ship those out, but I figured I'd take the gamble because stuff like this, it'd be nice to be able to cut through some larger plastics and some models, and then, just some other stuff. maybe even resin. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Nice. And that would make support removal a little bit nicer. Kind of do that operation stuff. Look at that. That is coming out nice. I was really worried about having the model and the supports touching the model and marring it up. But again, this is the default, and we're not getting that, so that's good. But again, I'd like to do another video maybe. I don't know if I want to print this same guy out. I could. I mean, I got the filament, and I could make it like bookends or something. That'd be nice. We could do something like that, or I could give it to somebody. That would be a cool thing, cool gift to give. But to see the difference on whether that object support XY distance would really cause a lot of problems. But if I saw it in those test prints and in other models that I've done before trying to use the Auto Tree Support Slim, I'm pretty sure we would have problems with it with something like that. And the other models weren't, they didn't have as many fine details as this. So some of those other models were like here it is, like we ended up with the Hulk. We got the Hulk up here, and tried to use the slim supports on that. And then I think I ended up using with the Warhammer dude. I think I used slim supports for that, and I had some problems. I had some fine details that popped off. But yeah, I'm really considering maybe doing another print. So we'll see how this goes. If you're leaving comments, I'm sorry I can't read them because my computer's back there. So it was like, well, do I do the video there or do it here? But I kind of like my desk. I like my desk and the models and the paints and all that stuff. It was like, yeah, I like that. So I don't know. I did have a computer monitor up over here, but the problem is then I'd have to run a long cable to go over the computer, and it's just like, I don't have the cable. And how often would I use that? I don't know. This is just, things are coming out good. I'm not as hesitant to pull the supports off and damage the model like I've done in the past. And that's because of that setting that we changed. So that is a good thing. It's just going to have supports all over the floor. I'm going to have to clean up. And then the other thing about the slim tree supports is that you would use a little bit less of material. But really in the grand scheme of things, the amount that you're going to be saving on your material is not going to be that much. It's not like you're going to make a huge significant savings with that. So it's kind of like, and I've heard people talk about that. And so with my slicer program, what I ended up doing with Creality Print, I think I did it with Orca as well, is, people are, oh, you're going to waste so much filament by, the difference between the Tree Auto supports and the Slim, you're going to save filament. And it's like, maybe 24 grams. I think I did a test actually on this and I looked it up and it's like the difference is like 24 grams. It depends. You would get greater savings, filament savings, by reducing the infill. So instead of doing the standard, 10 or 15% of whatever, the stock setting is for infill on most slicers, drop that down to, I dropped mine down to 10%, and then I dropped it down to 7, then I dropped it down to 5. And this one, I can't remember what I set this one for. But when you start going through the layers and reviewing it before you send it to print, you realize that I don't need 10, 15, 20% of gyroid or whatever, because it's the inside. This is going to be a model. It's going to be sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's not going to be cosplay or anything. So that is where you're going to make your money, as far as if you want to save filament, is in those areas of your infill. This one's a little... Oh, I see. Okay. I think I know what we got going on. Get some little ones. Now these seem to be more connected on than those other ones that we had. Interesting. So it seems to be a little bit more fused on the front than it was on the sides, which is interesting indeed. That one was easy to take off. Maybe need to do some surgical action. I think what I need to get is my little... These gonna cut? Nah. Let me get my cutters real quick. And I'll leave you with a little bit of music. That will have a little bit of music. Had to get my little cutters here. So do a little bit of surgical stuff here to get some of these. So anyway, yeah, it ended up, this was 20. It was a day, so it was 24 hours plus something else. I can't remember the total on it, but it was significant, and it was definitely a long print. So, let's see, we got some. Okay, look at that, nice, coming off nicely. Again, the supports are coming off nice. I mean, it's almost like they're barely touching. Some of them don't even look like they're touching, but we're still getting the details, and which is nice. That is good. So far, but then again, to do a real objective test, you would probably have to go through, and if this is the 0.26, maybe I'd have to go, because a lot of these seem like they're not touching, but we do have marring on some of these here, and where I was a little bit more aggressive, and just because of the mass, the amount of supports. So a little bit. But it's not because they're like, I don't know, it's hard to tell. In some places it's really, really good. But in other places it seems like there are some connection points on here that are just there. So it seems kind of like these here. I mean, those come off nicely, but it's just the whole trunk and everything we have that makes it. And again, that's probably why you got the slim support trees. But so far, this is a lot better than some of the other models that I've done that have been problematic in the past because the supports were so fused onto the model, and that's because I was using the stock settings and I didn't do any testing. So I had done a little testing before, but as I started doing larger models, the larger the model, of course, the lower your top Z distance, the more fused you're going to get. At least that's what it seems. And yeah. Might have to do some surgical stuff there. So I think there still needs to be some tweaking done by Creality. And on their stuff. But with that, I've also noticed that, like on my machine, and I've got a Mac Mini. It's an Apple M2, it has 32 gig of RAM. I bought it in 2023, so it's a couple years old. But it's a great machine. I do video editing with Final Cut Pro, so it definitely has the bones and the beef to do video editing and multi-clips and the whole 9 yards. But I have noticed that with Creality Print, like if you left click and drag, you usually have that little box and you can select everything that's within that box. I don't get that in Creality Print anymore, which is odd because I get it in PowerPoint, I get it in Tinkercad, I get it in other programs like, what was it, Mesh Mixer or whatever. There's a couple other programs where I'm able to do that, but with Creality Print, I'm not. So if you know on why that is happening, or if I screwed up and did a setting, or maybe the Creality Print and the new updates changed some stuff in my Mac, put it in the comment section. Shoot me an email at here's my email address, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. And hopefully I can get that fixed. Because I was like, yeah, other people are like left click and drag, and I'm like, hey, I can't do that anymore. And then there was some other things I couldn't do that other people were doing. What was it? There was some other feature in one of the new Creality Print releases that I wasn't able to do that other people with Macs can do. So, yeah. Or maybe they had a Windows, I'm not sure. I can't remember if they had Windows or not, or if it was a Mac. But I've got a Mac, and I love my Mac. So, yeah. That's going to be a doozy there. So, that's a big old trunk. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to try I think I have to do the auto supports tree slim and see if I can't get that going, because these things are just massive. And there are some problems with slicers. I mean, it's not just Creality Print that there are some things, because basically they're all the same. You know, there's Prusa and this and that and their slicer, and what was it, Orca, and this stole from that, and Bamboo took that and, you know, skinned theirs and made it theirs, and, you know, from open source. And so there's just so much. I need to be careful there. So much in these slicers. Really, I think Orca should just be the slicer. And then these companies just pay Orca to skin it and send their money instead of having each company trying to do their own thing. You know, reskinning Orca and trying to reinvent the wheel with their own little stuff. Just pay Orca, and then Orca can just add the little skins, and then you could just pay them, and, you know, you'd be good to go. I think that would be better. And then, what was the other thing? There was something else. Oh, the planer cut. That's what I've been looking at. Doing larger prints, especially when I did the Hulk, I had to cut that. That was fairly easy to cut. But when I was looking at doing an even bigger Hulk, which is my bucket list, is to eventually I would like to do the Hulk 5 feet tall. Life size would just be too much. But I would like to do the Hulk about 5 feet tall. And when I was looking at that and trying to do planer cuts and all that stuff, what I've noticed is when you do the planer cut, it covers, it's the entire work plane of your printer. So let's say this mat here, this mat here is the dimensions of my build plate. So if I wanted to cut my model and then the plane comes down and I could cut it in half, or if I'm trying to cut the arms, I'm still going to have that huge plane across the entire build area of trying to cut just an arm off. And I'm running into problems of now I can cut part of the arm off, but then it's going to cut other parts of the model that I don't. So that means I have to clone multiple of these. I wish they would make a planer cut where you could reduce the plane with some little squares and maybe even have it in a circle, change that plane into a circle so that you could make it smaller, and then that way you could go around and you wouldn't have to cut your model to pieces and have to do a ton of clones to try to do that. Now I know I could do Blue Band, but even that has some limitations because that just kind of puts it into blocks, and I don't know if you can move around with that. So yeah, there's that. Definitely some things that could be improved upon, especially in every slicer. That's for sure, because if you could take that planer cut and then, pull in the dimensions of that, make it a square, make it a rectangle, make it a circle, whatever it is, change that would be awesome. Whoever does that first is they're going to be on it. And again, it just comes down to, usability, and whoever has the best functions and the easiest functions, people are going to download that slicer. So if Orca does it, I'll be changing to Orca. If Creality Print does it, I'll definitely be doing that. Oh no, I've got some messed up stuff here. I've got a failed support. Oh no. Oh no. Hopefully it didn't ruin the print. Actually, I kind of noticed that, and I just kind of closed my eyes, and I was like, maybe if I just close my eyes and it'll go away. Is what it ended up doing. But yeah, I kind of screwed that pooch a little bit. And with this piece right here, so that piece right there, that cloth, see how jacked up that is? So that didn't do well. So we're gonna have to do some model plastic fixing there, which is odd because it's not because of a lack of, because it comes off this big branch, or that one there. It just seems like an odd, yeah, that was totally fried. It just seems like an odd, the support just didn't work well. Strange. But I think we can fix that. So close. But the good thing is it's just that little piece of cloth right there. You can see right there that comes down. So it buggered that up. I think I can make that work. I think I've got do some putty or something like that. I think we can fix that. We will do our best. What are your support settings in your top Z distance? And I've noticed there were some people that did a top Z distance of 0.1. And in my experience with my K2 Plus, the 0.1, those supports so fused onto the model. It was like, yeah, it damaged models, and I was just amazed that that's even a setting. But yet, there's like a guy in the Creality K2 user group, what's his name, Gary, what's his last name? Starts with a B. Sorry for forgetting the last name. But he uses a 0.1 for a top Z distance, and he does like life-size stuff. So, and smaller stuff, and he uses that same top Z distance. So, I don't know, maybe it's just machine to machine, and I mean, there are people that have had like 2 or 3 different K2 pluses, and they've had to have different settings on different things between the machine, even though they're running the exact same filament. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. Let's do some surgical stuff here. Don't really want to snap off this axe in the wrong place, because that would be messed up. Easy. Look at that, nice. See, the problem we have is that, ooh, see how that buggered up right there? So we didn't get the support we needed there. Dang it. Oh well. Like I said, I think we can fix that. We can do some modeling clay or something like that, and we can fix that. But it makes me wonder, because so far, all of these support trees that are on here, nothing is really touching the model. We still have some separation, which is good. I thought the way it looked in some places, it was like, yeah, surely this is running into the model and we would have problems, but it's close. It is close, that's for sure. Does anybody else pinch themselves with the thumb with these type of clippers? You know, your boom, and it's right there. Yeah. I'm not the only one, I'm pretty sure. I just need to get some new needle nose. Sure that might have something to do with it as well. Ow, just like that. Damn it. Okay. And that top Z distance, the other thing about that, and I was really surprised because the top Z distance is actually the distance between, you have your support trunks, and then you have the top of your supports, you have your interface layer, and then you have a space, and that's what that top Z distance is, actually the space between that interface layer and the layer of the overhang. And so 0.6 millimeters or 0.26 millimeters is what we're using. That's why we've got that, why they're not connecting up, but we're still getting the support. That's like magic. How the hell does that do? How does that work? I'm sure it's pretty simple to a lot of people, but people like me, those things, it's magic. So, but this is turning out okay. Oh, there we go, look at that. And there's not a lot of, there wasn't a lot of contact. We just had the two slots for his feet. You know, these slots right here that go into the slots on the base. We need to do some more surgery. That ultrasonic knife blade thing would be awesome. Cutter thing would be awesome right now. Seriously. But with the other thing of having the life size or the 5 foot tall Hulk that I want to do, that's something that let's get the Hulk over here. When we have the Hulk, something like this isn't going to be bad because, like I said, I was able to get the cuts like here, and of course there was already cut there, but I was able to cut here at the knees. So, you know, putting these up, and it would have minimal supports. It wouldn't have like a ton of supports like this. But I wish I had more control over the planer cut, and be able to reduce that plane. Some people were talking about, what was it? Mesh mixer. I've got that, but man, that's confusing. I guess I just need to practice it a little bit more. But that you can do that and have more control over the cutting, but still it's a little bit more involved. And I'm surprised somebody didn't make an STL model cutter with where you can reduce that plane so easily. So, but I don't know. That'll be a thing. Eventually, that'll be a thing. And whoever comes out with that thing that is going to be awesome. And if you could, kind of like Luban, if you could sparse up the model or cut the model in a way that you could change the dimensions and still, you know, have it labeled and so on and so forth. Maybe they're actually working on that. But yeah, having the ability to adjust the plane or that whole plane when you're doing that cut would be awesomeness. And somebody needs to make side cutters that are longer, so I need to look for those. Maybe those are already a thing. Probably pretty sure they are. Okay. Look at that. We're getting there. That surgical. Makes me feel like I really did something awesome. It cut plastic away from a model. Okay. So, alrighty, getting better, getting better. The auto support feature is pretty good for the most part. I've noticed on some models is that you'll still have some failed supports. Oh, did I? Oh no, okay, that's still support. I thought I was ripping his foot off. It's like, no! But still not 100%. At least in resin printing, with resin printing, there's more margin of error in resin printing when you're doing supports and stuff like that with auto supports than with FDM printing. So I'm pretty impressed with the FDM printing and auto support feature. So there's that. But there's just a lot of other variables involved. So, and then, the other question is, that I've been running across, is by doing all this stuff and wanting to do a 5-foot tall Hulk, or maybe a 5-foot tall Viking. No, I don't think I'd do the Viking that tall. I wouldn't do this Viking like that. I think I would do the Hulk just because it's a Marvel character. This would just be, I mean, somebody else would like it, I bet. But, the amount of time that it's going to take to do and print out the Hulk is huge. So, no pun intended. That's going to be a huge thing in itself, because with the Hulk, he's got his base. So, we've got the Hulk himself, and then here is his base. When I scale this up, and I think it's like 600% to be able to get, or 600 or 700% to get this to where the Hulk and the base is like 5 feet high, just to do the base would take 810 hours, which is like 3 months. So that's crazy. 810 hours, whatever that comes out to. I think it was 3 months. So that would be 810 hours just to do the base. And I was like, whoa. And for only having one printer, that would, a printing 800 and that's a ton of hours of being able to print that. That would be insane. And so that begs the question, well, if I'm going to do a big one, should I get another printer? Do I get another K2 Plus? Or do I wait and see what other kind of machine comes out there? It just makes you wonder. It's like, do I or should I? Or, because that would be, if I was going to do big stuff all the time, then definitely I would get a bigger machine, or more machines, not a bigger machine. Just get the the Giga Storm or whatever that Elegoo did, that ended up being a horrendous failure. There's still people that haven't been able to get that thing going. I think I saw one guy was able to print some stuff on it, but it was such a pain in the ass. And it's like, I would rather, because you imagine having a print and you get like 90% done and then it craps out and then all your filament is, you wasted a ton of filament. So I think that needs to come into play. I think I'll go back to there's something to be said for cutting up your model into more sizable chunks so that you don't lose, a buttload of filament if you get a failed print. So that would be horrible. Could you imagine doing something giant print on the Gigastorm, the Elegoo Gigastorm, and then you get like 90% done, then it totally craps out, and you just, days and months of printing, and it just ends up failing? That would suck. Alrighty. Okay, not too shabby at all. Got a little bit of marks that we can end up seeing there. You can see that. So we'll have to fill in some stuff there. But as far as the rest, we got the common, contact points that we might have to do a little bit of sanding and a little bit of cleanup, with an X-Acto knife to get this looking really good. And I think I ripped off a little bit too much there. So, but overall, that turned out good, with the exception of his little piece of cloth there that is supposed to be this piece right here. So this is this little piece that is supposed to go down just about his knee. It was supposed to be this piece that was go just about right here. So we had a failed support about right here. And yeah, we can see that and how that kind of went crazy. But I think we can fix that. Like you said, I think we could do some modeling clay or something like that, and we can repair that. But for the details on this, I think it's turned out well for what we got. Boom, booyah, and there it is. Now, does that come out a little bit better? Yeah, a little bit. So there it is, and with the exception of a little huge little dingleberry there, this will turn out pretty good. So we have this, which started from biggest to that to this. You can see all that? Yeah. So this was resin printed. And we have that. Let me put that guy up there because he's so small. And then we did the resin print of this. And then I took the same model and we ended up doing an FDM print on this. So, yeah, not bad. Pretty good. And this is printed at 0.16 millimeters. So if you're kind of wondering about that, and it is matte white. I was thinking about doing it in another color, but really, this would be the easiest to, I don't want to do it in black because if I have to prime this thing, you're going to have to do multiple coats of white primer to cover the black, and that, that would be rough. But if it was, if this was black filament, there's something to be said for that, because then you could just kind of spray down and do like a white zenithal type of deal, so you get the shadows underneath, and that might be worth doing. But it is what it is right now. And I've got two more 2 kilos of this Creality Hyper PLA white, and then I just ordered and got in from Amazon, shipped all the way from the United States, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks on a boat to get to Korea. And I ended up getting Polymaker white, which was a 3 kilogram roll. So I'm hoping that will fit inside my Creality pie, space pie. So yeah, there it is, folks. I think it turned out good, with that exception there. So we're gonna have to do a lot of work there. But I do have, what do I have to fix that? I do have this. I have this, which is, this is a Vallejo something or other. Of course, the sticker's torn off. I'm not sure why. But it's a kind of like a mastic type of stuff, kind of like almost like caulking, and then that hardens. But it doesn't hold its shape well. It's really kind of liquidy, so you wouldn't be able to like make this into a shape. But I do have some Green Stuff World acrylic modeling filler. So this, but that's not real good either. If you know of some stuff that I could use, maybe I just need to go to the store and get some Play-Doh and, make that little piece, and maybe I just make that smaller and smooth it out, and we'd be good to go on that. Yeah, that just kind of buggered that all up. Seriously. But if you don't know, and if I can make that look smooth enough, you won't know unless you watch the video, and then of course you watch the video, you know. So anyway, let's get the final results on this as far as the setting for the top Z distance of being 0.26. Seems to work really well, except for that one problem area down there. But everything else came out good, and even though we didn't have a lot of intricate details that would be snapped off, we still had some areas that you needed to be careful with. The axe handle, the axe, parts of his I don't know, his loincloth or whatever you want to end up calling it. Not a lot of intricate details, but we still got the details of the model, sans this part right here. But for the most part, it's just going to need a little bit of sanding, a little bit with the X-Acto knife to get some of these things off of here. There's a little tip, so we got some post-processing to do, but compared to the default setting, which I think was 0.1 for the top Z distance, this is a lot easier to remove the supports, and even the supports off of this. But you have this hollow buggered out thing, which is, I don't know why they made that like that. That's not even flat. Maybe I need to learn how to do Mesh Mixer or Blender, and so I can just like fix this, because it won't go into Tinkercad. It's too involved. But yeah, it definitely works. Definitely something that you need to look into if you're going to be doing models and you're having problems with the supports being really fused onto your model and leaving a lot of pock marks, things like that. Yeah, definitely something that you would want to do. And again, you can go to Printables, look up Uncle Jesse, and he has that overhang test. Download the ones, or just download a bunch of blanks and enter in the information for your top Z distance, and then run those, print them out, and do your own testing. And remember, when we did do the test, we did see that there was a difference in the way some of the supports were when they were on the larger test model versus the mini-me test model of the same top Z distance. So that kind of leads me to believe that it also need to take into account what you're going to be printing. Is it going to be large models? Is it going to be small? Is it going to have a lot of details? If you've got a lot of finer details, like for example, we have this guy here, which is, y'all can see that? Yeah, you can see it like that. But see, this purity scroll had snapped off, and that's a small detail, and unfortunately that popped off, and because the supports were so strongly connected to it, and there was a lot of pock marks and marring of the edge of the cape where we had a lot of supports on there. But even then, we've got some noticeable parts. But I mean, even this wasn't too bad. But getting those supports off, I was definitely racking my brain, and it really made me nervous and a little stressful so that I wouldn't break off things and more than I did. And yeah, so definitely the top Z distance at 0.26 worked out well. So, but again, this was at the, that hurt. Ouch. It's like stepping on Legos. Good Lord. I'm in my bare feet. But yeah, so anyway, we're going to finish this up, and obviously it's a lot better with that top Z distance. The other thing is that object support XY distance, that needs to be increased, and with the Creality, and I'll have to look at the Orca slicer to see if you do the Tree Auto Support Slim, if we still have those support trunks getting in contact with the model, even though you set that distance like we had at 0.6, we were still getting it connected and touching the model, the support trunks touching the model with that setting on that slim setting. So I'm wondering if we get the same thing with Orca slicer, so that would be something to look and preview, not print out, but just to see what we get on the preview with that slicer. So yeah, I think in either it's my Mac is kind of messed up, or as I've seen with some other resin slicing software, that when you use their stuff with a Mac, it's not as updated or as refined as the Windows version of those slicers. So for an example is, what was it? I think Lychee, and then CheetahBox was the other one. That it worked great on Windows, and it worked great as the free demo, but when it got onto my Mac, it ends up, I actually had the first Mac bug problem, and it was like, yeah, this is going to take a little while to fix, and I'm like, well, I'm not paying for, this if it doesn't work. The free version worked better, the demo version worked better than the paid version, so they're like, yeah, we understand, so I got my money back. But yeah, and that reminds me, I do have Lychee Slicer Pro, which also has an FDM printer slicer. So maybe I'll do a video comparing the Orca, comparing the Creality print with the Auto Support Tree Slim style, and then do the same thing and pop up Orca, and then pop up the Lychee Slicer Pro with the FDM version, and see how these things come into play. So I think that'd be a little interesting thing. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Put it in the comments section down below. But overall, I'd say as far as the print came out, this would be 1%. So we got about 99% of our print done. 98% came out good. I'd say 99% with this little piece. But I think that won't be too noticeable. I could just kind of make this and form this with some clay, and boom, I think we'd be good to go. So, yeah, maybe some Play-Doh is the deal. It's just going to sit around and be a display piece. So, yeah. Or some resin. Well, I'd have to make a piece and then glue it on. I've got some resin glue, so I could use a UV light to connect that on there. But then painting this thing that's going to be a thing too. So, because I'm far behind in my painting. So anyway, that's going to be it. We did the test of the top Z distance of 0.26. Seems to be working out great. Again, that top Z distance is the distance between the overhang and then the support, and you have your interface layer, and there's actually that little bit of space in between there, which in our case was 0.6 millimeters, and that's why we have that. But it's amazing on how even with that space, what do we end up with? We still had a supported model, sans the little cloth thing there. So, yeah, kind of amazing, isn't it? All right. So that being said, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. And if you look in the description box down below, if you're interested in getting the K2 Plus, there is a share link thing that I'll get a couple of nickels off of that. Nothing will come out of your pocket. So if you use that link, that would be cool. I would appreciate that. But at a minimum, like and subscribe to the channel. And if you think I did some cool stuff or liked the video and kind of got you out from the rest of the world, you can always buy me a coffee. There's a link down there for that as well. Alrighty. that is going to be it. So thank you for watching. I appreciate that, and we will see you all on the next video. Peace. Now I got to get up and turn off the computer. Alrighty.